Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there was a bro. Bro decided that he was going to bro. It's addicting. I want to read more. I want to read more, you know what I mean? It's just never ending. Like, damn, what did he tell me? Bro? A little spicy.
Get the objective. Assault. Neutral bomb.
He's like, bro, it's just like that.
Bomb taken.
He was trying to look. He was trying to creep. You see that?
Bomb army. Carrier kill. Bomb taken.
Come on, let's go, bro. Oh, dude, I'm sticking. My arm's sticking on the wood right now. It did too. As soon as you put up to that light, it was like you could hear the silence, the radio wave. That's a mistake. Crybaby bitch. That's a mistake.
Bomb taken. Bomb army. Bomb army. Bomb arm. team scored. Objective incoming. Objective ready. Bomb taken.
Yeah, that's what it is. Maybe it's your incompetence. I don't know. Or maybe because you're the one doing it.
Bomb army. Kill. Carrier kill. Bomb army. Bomb taken.
A lesson in what treason means and other things. What does your country mean to you?
Bomb taken. Bomb army.
Oh. We were talking about a country.
Bomb armed. Enemy team scored. Objective incoming.
Jitterbug going on there.
Objective ready. Bomb taken.
We got Warsaw going on.
Kill.
The
Bomb
gaps,
taken. Bomb
if you were to actually look at a blade. Like the doorways of the blade. Like a rim.
rocked.
Or was that rim sleep?
Bomb taken.
What was that? I could see the ball, dude. That was crazy. I've never seen that. That's first. The wisp.
Bomb army.
Oh, buddy.
Bomb
Oh, buddy.
Enemy team nearing victory. Objective incoming. Objective ready. Bomb taken.
Army. Okay, dude.
Bomb taken. 5 minutes remaining.
Who has the mental problem?
kill. Bomb taken.
I'm gonna have to get like real drunk. Show you.
Dropped. Bomb taken.
That's a little off.
Bomb taken.
A wristwatch?
Bomb taken.
Tick, 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 tick. Some cogs.
Bomb armed. Bomb armed. Any team scored. Defeat. Objective incoming. Objective ready.
That's awkward. Coming in and ruin the game for people, especially people that are good. That's why you're doing it. This is your grave? The dead space, dude. You can tell you're putting in the work and it just drops. I don't know what to say. A squash? Squish face? The squash? You're talking about scrunchy rolls, what you're talking about. Right? Oh, it's like whenever you're teaching a dog, you put the treat on the dog's nose. I don't know what to say about that. There it goes, right there. It's on the light.
king of the hill. Hill incoming. Hill ready. Enemy team took the hill.
Damn. Did that have like a curveball on it? I'm pretty good with angles. I had to have a curveball on it.
Enemy team scored. Hill incoming. Hill
No.
Hill control. Enemy team took the hill. Hill control. Enemy team took the hill. Hill control. Hill control. Your team about to score. Your team scored.
Oh, nice.
Incoming.
I don't know, dude. I could hear it as well, so it's like I didn't hear it ricochet off
Hill
anything.
control.
Don't know what to tell you.
Enemy team took the hill.
Has to do with my wrist, my forearm. Foreman?
Hill control.
Foreman?
Your team about to score.
Oh yeah, right here?
Enemy team took the hill.
Or how about the citizens? Hey, bro. But you don't have these things. They even talked about that. Like standing army and a militia, there's a difference. It's like a standing army would be in a time of war, and a militia would be like in the moment right then and there, and you need it. Then over time, it becomes an army.
Hill control. Your team scored.
But it's only
Hill
like,
incoming.
but I mean,
Hill ready.
don't get me wrong.
Hill control. took the hill. Hill control.
Overall, good games. I guess I could throw on Messiah the Cylinder. Okay, right there, man. I can feel it on my face. Nah, not cool.
Enemy team took the hill.
Ah, I knew it too. I couldn't get a good angle. My arm, bro.
Enemy about to score.
I'm playing like doo-doo right now.
Hill control. Your team scored. Hill
I'm getting them, but it's like
Hill
it's
ready.
chaotic.
Hill control. Enemy team took the hill. Enemy team took the hill. In my sight. Hill control.
And they just keep coming, bro.
Enemy team took the hill.
That's connection, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Gotta be. I'm not even hitting them. I'm like directly on them.
Hill control. Hill control. Enemy team took the hill. Hill control. Nearing victory. Target spotted. Enemy team took the hill. Enemy team took the hill. Enemy about to score. Hill control. Enemy team scored. Hill incoming. Hill ready. Hill control.
She canceled it? You're not smiling? What do you mean?
In my sights.
I say she when I... Do we really know?
Enemy team took the hill. the hill.
That's a good move.
Victory.
That nade, bro? I wonder if he meant to do that. Ah. Oh, that's how he's doing it? He's telling you how he's doing it. On the line of Judah? No, thank you. Oh. What is that silver striker? Silver Shroud. Fallout. It seems like it's on that radio wave, bro. Come on, get that off. Kapow. Find out on the next episode. That's what it is, dude. That's definitely what it is. Hi-Ho Silver? Who is that? I haven't seen it yet. I go pro, go. Look. See, it is. It's Hi-Ho Silver. It's exactly what it is. You know how much time that would have taken for you to approve this? Not only that, like, the steps here. Trying to explain this. I can do it. So before the flat screen, you had the curved TV, the tube TV. So the TV that you watched as a child, now that we have flat screens, it's like the eclipse. Whenever the eclipse shines on a leaf, it changes the curvature of the light. So the flat screen changed that. So like when you're watching it, your brain, they're using the tube, they're using a radio wave. Something similar. And so it's basically like an attachment in your head. So that the flat screen, now that we're getting older, it's basically drawing that out. Alzheimer's. It's like a subliminal message. But it's a curve from the tube TV opposed to the flat screen. So wherever that cloud is, that is exactly what it is. Hi-Ho Silver. My dad watches it. He watches black and white TV. So they still have it attached to that. But it's not a curved. But it's because it's based off a curved. You understand? That is exactly what it is. As was pointed out just a while ago. My alien friend coming up my eyeball there. Or am I the alien? And which one is it? I haven't figured that out. Fort Bragg. Yo, hi-ho silver. That is definitely what it is, dude. They're starting to separate it, dude. Bro. What's the truth here? AI. Or is it
Capture the
IE?
flag.
I missed it. That was routine, bro.
Flag captured. Flag.
Very nice. That's alright.
Captured your flag. Enemy flag returned. flag returned. Enemy flag returned.
You're a bitch. Shut up. Period. It's that simple. You're a bitch. We don't need it. Thank you. Cool. No, thank you. Go down to the, what is it, the business with SADI? Dumbass. The fact that I'm waiting. Oh, the Lord of the Cylinder, the Messiah of the Cylinder. I forgot about that. I was trying to figure that out. Like, where's that
Cylinder
headpiece
cap
coming
as
from?
the
That's
mechanism
smart.
ran down, and the consequent admission of minute quantity.
At Granger, we're for the ones who pay attention.
My face and gasped. I breathed.
Oh, yeah?
Simultaneously, with a loud click, the cap of the cylinder flew off. Air rushed in. A stabbing light broke through my closed eyelids. I fainted. It was, of course, the gradual unscrewing of the cylinder cap as the mechanism ran down, and the consequent admission of minute quantities of oxygen that had begun to restore me. I must have passed several days in semi-consciousness before the cylinder opened. When the last thread of the screw was traversed, the inrush of air caused the respiration to begin. I was breathing when I became conscious once more, and my heart was straining in my breast. I got my eyes open. There followed hours of light-tortured delirium, during which I struggled to regain the motor powers. With infinite endeavor, I placed
Moby
one
Dick?
hand upon the other
I
and
caught
passed
Moby
it up
Dick.
the wrist
Oh,
and
oh,
forearm.
yeah. I
The
forgot about
muscles
that.
were all gone. The ulna and radius were perfectly distinguishable, and I could encircle either with my fingers.
I'm trying to play
After
Halo,
I had
bro.
managed to flex
Either
them,
you can hand over the
I noticed
certificates
that
and
my
send me
joints
on my
creaked
way,
like
or I'm just
rusty
gonna sit here and
hinges.
play Halo. I don't know
I
what
tried
tell
to
you.
bend my elbows, and this next grim battle
It's that simple.
lasted an incalculable time.
bucket
Gradually,
shot,
I
that
became
cylinder,
aware
bro.
of some obstacle
You need to
on
pick up on
each
that.
side of me. Then, for the first time since my awakening, I knew that I was inside the cylinder, but I did not know that it had fallen upon its side until it slid forward, and my puny struggles dislodged me and flung me free into a pool of water. I drew in a deep breath, feeling my lungs
Puny?
crackle like old parchment, and plunged my face and shoulders beneath the surface. My skin sucked up the moisture like a sponge, and I contrived to get a few drops past my swollen tongue. I had just sense enough and time to turn my face upward before I became unconscious again. I must have slept long, for, on my next awakening, the light was brighter and still more torturing. Memory began to stir. I recalled my conversation with Sir Spofford, our journey into the annex, Lazaroff's invitation to me to enter the cylinder. He must have shut me in for a moment by way of a practical joke and gone away with Esther, persuading himself and her that I could free myself and would follow. I tried to call him, but only a croaking gasp came from my lips. I tried again and again, gradually regaining the power of vocal utterance, but there came no answer, and each time that I called, the echoing, hoarse susurrus brought me nearer to the realization of some terror at hand which I did not dare to face. I looked about me. Beside me lay the cylinder, almost buried in mud. I was still within the secret vault, but a part of the brick partition had fallen inward in such a way as to screen the few visible inches of the steel case that had housed me, so that nobody would have suspected its presence in the mud of the little chamber. I remembered that there had been two more. I looked about me, but there was no sign of them. Now I began to realize that there had been a considerable change in my surroundings since I became unconscious. The light which had distressed me came through a hole in the roof of the adjoining cellar, filtering thence through the aperture in the broken wall, and was of the dimmest. In place of the concrete floor there was a
Appreciate it.
swamp of mud, with pools of water here and there, and the dirt was heaped up in the corners and against the walls. Moss and splotched fungi
Yeah, right
grew among the tumbled bricks, and everywhere were spore stains and microscopic plant growth. I was bewildered by these signs of dilapidation everywhere. The guinea pigs and monkeys were gone. The cellar was empty, save for some low, rough planks of wood fitted on trestles and set about the floor. On the wall at the far end hung something that gradually took form as I strained my aching eyes to a focus. It was a crucifix. The cellar had become a subterranean chapel. The cross was hewed coarsely of pine, and the figure that hung upon it grotesquely carven. Yet there was the pathos of wistful, ignorant effort in the workmanship that bespoke the sincerity of the artist. I made my difficult way upon hands and knees through the gap in the wall, across the mud floor of the cellar, toward the stairs, resting several times from weariness before I reached my destination. But when I arrived at the far end, where the stairs should have been, I received a shock that totally unnerved me. The stairs were gone. In place of them was a debris of rubble and broken stones, as firmly set as if workmen had built it into the wall. The mass must have been there for years, because out of the thin soil that had drifted in, a little oak tree sprang, twisting its spindling stem to rear its crown toward the patch of daylight. At last I understood. I had come to realize the fact that my sleep had been a prolonged one. It might have lasted weeks, even months, I had thought, as with cataleptics. But an entire century? That idea had been too incredibly grotesque for consideration. That Sir Spofforth, with whom, it seemed, I had dined almost yesterday, had gone ages ago to his long home. Lazaroff, Esther, whom I loved, that generations had come into birth and died. It seemed too cruel a jest. I wept. I raved and called for Esther. Surely 100 years had never passed, turning her brown hair to gray, lining her gentle face, bringing at last the gift of death to her, while I lay underground, encased in steel and air. I cried aloud in terror. I hammered helplessly upon the walls. Again I called Esther, Lazaroff, George. There was no answer of any kind. Presently a ray of light quivered through the hole, falling upon the heap of debris that blocked the stairway. The yellow beam moved onward, and now it bathed the thin branches of the little twisted tree that, by the aid of those few minutes of sunlight daily, had ventured into life. It had grown cunningly sidewise, so as to expose the maximum of wood to the light. I watched the ray till it went out. I wanted to show the plant to Lazaroff, to ask him whether the mechanics of heliotropism could suffice to answer the problem of the tree's brainless consciousness. And my chagrin that this whim could not be fulfilled assumed an absurd significance. It was, in fact, the realization of this loss of responsiveness to the reality of the situation that constantly urged me to find some way of escape when I might have relapsed otherwise into an acquiescence which would have brought insanity and death. The stairs being gone, I turned my consideration to the cellar roof. To reach this, it would be necessary to drag one of the planks beneath the hole and scramble up, clinging to the sides with my fingers and bracing my feet against the wall. This feat was not a difficult one for a normal man, but for me clearly impossible. I must wait until I became stronger. It is a strange thing, but I had not associated the need of waiting with the idea of food until I found the box of biscuit. I stumbled upon the box by the accident of scratching my wrist against the edge as I crawled along the wall. I saw the corner projecting from a mound of earth, and, scraping some of the dirt away, I lifted the pine wood lid. Inside the box I found a quantity of biscuit which seemed to have been baked recently. It was crisp and too hard for me to break. I dipped a piece in the stagnant water, and, as I swallowed the first morsels, became aware of my ravenous hunger. I can hardly estimate the duration of the imprisonment that followed. It was of days and nights which succeeded each the other in monotonous succession, during which, like a hibernating beast, I crouched and
Excuse
groped
me, what was
within
that?
the cellar, dozing and shivering, and gnawing incessantly at my food. Only those
Thank
few
you for the
minutes
win,
of
I appreciate it.
sunshine daily saved my reason, I am convinced now. My evening clothes, which at first had appeared to have suffered no injury during my century of sleep, had begun to disintegrate and hung upon me in tattered fragments. It was a period of despair with very little alternating hope. Sometimes I prayed wildly beneath the crucifix. Sometimes, in an excess of madness, I cried for Esther and Lazaroff again. And for whole hours I convinced myself that this was a dream. But my strength returned with amazing swiftness. As in the case of a typhoid convalescent, every particle of food seemed to build up my body. I must have put on pounds each day. The barrel framework of my ribs filled out. The muscles showed their old outlines beneath the skin. The fluid rushed into the joints and restored their suppleness. And daily I practiced exercises. I managed to drag one of the benches beneath the hole at last, and, standing on this, tried often to draw myself up. But on each occasion my
throw down the
struggles
whale?
only brought down a shower of earth and stones, and I resigned myself to a period of further waiting, watching for dawn like a troglodyte, and for the sun like a fire worshipper. In the end, my escape developed in a manner the least imaginable. It began with my discovery of a second box in another of the mounds. I opened it hastily, in the greedy anticipation of finding something more palatable than biscuit. Instead of this, I found a number of strange battens of wood. They resembled policemen's truncheons, but each had a tiny, rounded plate of glass near the head, and there evidently was some sort of mechanism near the handle, for there was a push-button fitted with a heavy guard of brass, so strong that I could not raise it with my fingers. It was indeed providential that I was unable to do so. I carried the strange implement beneath the hole in the roof and laid it on the bench, intending to examine it more carefully as soon as the sun appeared. Meanwhile, this being the time for my daily exercise, I mounted the bench and tried to pull myself up. I failed, yet I detected a considerable improvement in my muscular power, and, becoming exhausted, I prepared to descend. Inadvertently, but without anticipating any serious result, I placed my foot against the truncheon in such a way as to elevate the guard. I heard it click as it rose into position, and, in setting down my foot again, depressed the push button. The truncheon tipped to the ground, pointing upward. I saw a ray of blinding light, of intense whiteness tipped with mauve, shoot from the head, and, with a crash, a shower of stones fell on me, bearing me to the ground and enveloping me in a cloud of dust. I must have lain half-stunned for some minutes. I was aroused by feeling the sunlight on my eyelids. I started to my feet. The hole in the roof was nearly twice the former size, and a heap of fallen stones and pieces of brick afforded me a perfect stepway. I was scratched by the falling debris, but happily the explosion, as I deemed it, seemed to have been in an upward direction. In a moment I was scrambling up the stones. I slipped and touched and struggled. I got my head and shoulders in the air and pulled my body after me. I trod upon leaves. I looked about me. I was standing in the midst of what appeared to be an ancient forest of oak and beech trees, whose bare boughs, covered with snow, shook under a gray sky above a carpet of withered, snow-spread leaves, and under these were endless heaps of disintegrating bricks. In vain I looked about me for the Institute. There was no sign of it, nor of Sir Spofford's house. Nowhere was anything to be seen but the same forest growth, the dead leaves scurrying before the chill wind, and the vast brick piles. I had emerged from the cellar into a trackless wilderness. And now, at last, my final doubt, which had bred hope, was gone. I ran through the forest, on and on, shouting like a madman and beating my breast, stumbling over the brick heaps that lay everywhere, plunging through thorny undergrowth, heedless of any course. I must have been running for 10 minutes when my strength failed me, and I collapsed beside an ancient road, overgrown with shrubs and saplings, yet discernible in its course between the tall trees that bordered it. Before me, far away through the vista line, I saw a white bank against the gray horizon. I flung myself upon my face and prayed, with all my will, to die. End of chapter 3. Read by Brian Fullen, Plano, Texas, January 2025. Chapter 4 of The Messiah of the Cylinder by Victor Rousseau. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Road to London. A shadow swept over me, and looking up, I saw an airplane gliding noiselessly above. It stopped, hung poised and motionless, and then dropped slowly and almost vertically into the road, coming to ground within a dozen yards of where I lay. There stepped out a man in a uniform of pale blue, having insewn upon the breast a piece of white linen cut to the shape of a swan. He came toward me with hesitancy and stood over me, staring at me and at my clothes with an expression indicative of the greatest bewilderment. "Where's your brass, friend?" he inquired after a few moments, speaking in a high-pitched, monotonous, and rather nasal tone. He rubbed his smooth-shaven face in thought. "Where's your brass?" he repeated. I perceived that he wore about his neck a twisted cord whose ends were tied through the loop of a brass plate, stamped with letters and figures. "For God's sake, tell me what year this is," I cried. At the profane expletive, which had been drawn from me by my anguish, he recoiled in dismay. He seemed less shocked than frightened. He glanced about him quickly, and then cast a very searching look at me. But next he began to smile in a half-humorous, kindly way. "You're one of the escaped defectives, aren't you?" he inquired. "You have nothing to fear from me, friend. We airplane scouts have no love for the guard. You can go on your way, but where are you lying up? Are your friends near?" "Will you tell me what year this is?" I demanded frantically. "Yep, certainly," he answered. "This is 37, cold solstice less 5. He shook his head and began staring at me again. I laughed hysterically. "I don't know what that jargon means," I answered, "but I went to sleep in the vault of the Biological Institute in the year 1915. Perplexity had succeeded alarm. The air scout shook his head again. He was one of those deliberate, slow-moving men whose resolutions, tardily made, hardened to inflexibility. I recognized the type and found the individual pleasing. He was a good-looking young fellow of about 28, with straight, dark hair and a very frank countenance. He looked like a sailor, and the rolling, open collar, which fell back, sailor fashion, revealed a muscular throat, tanned, like his face, to the color of the bricks around us. "I don't know what to make of you," he said thoughtfully. "I don't want to trap you, but you were better off in the art factories. I don't know what to do with you." I sprang to my feet, and for an instant I ceased to realize my predicament. "Will you take me to my friends in London?" I asked. In my mind was the memory of a university acquaintance who lived in St. John's Wood. But then the swift remembrance came back to me, and I hung my head and groaned.
Back to London,
Exclaimed the air scout.
but you'll be put to the leather vats. Dr. Sanson is furious, and the police are searching for you everywhere. You're crazed. What's the sense of running away from painting pictures and going back to sweat 10 years over the hides?
Take me to London, I implored. I have nowhere to go. Perhaps, I don't know. I was hoping wildly that somebody whom I had known might still survive. But by this time I was beginning to pull myself together. I resolved to wait for his decision.
Now, friend,
He said, as if he had made up his mind.
your top got stuffed making those factory pictures, as was very natural. Now I think you had better go back to London, and I'll take you there, since your friends have shaken you. But of course it must be the police station. I can't risk my own liberty. Once more, are you sure you want to go? If not, I haven't seen you.
I'll go, I answered indifferently.
Yep, step in then.
I took my seat beside him. It will seem incredible, but I had never ridden in an airplane before. In my other days, only a few had seen these craft. It was hardly more than 6 years since the Wrights had flown when my long sleep began. In spite of my oppression of mind, or perhaps because the days of horror that I had spent in the cellar produced the unavoidable reaction, I began to feel the exhilaration of the flight as we ascended to a height of perhaps 1,000 feet and drove northward. The sensation was that of sitting still and seeing the trees flit by beneath me, and would have been pleasing but for the intense cold, which pierced through my rags
really?
and numbed me.
I didn't even see
I
that.
perceived that the airplane was under perfect control and could be stayed without falling. After a while, I realized that there was no
Airplane?
motor.
Oh my god.
My companion saw me looking at the machine.
Improved solar type.
That's not me?
He said,
That's not me.
patting her caressingly.
Better than a bird, isn't she?
He turned toward me.
You've been sleeping in the wood these 3 days?
He asked.
And find the factories best? I don't score you for that. Where's the rest of you? 5, weren't there? Why didn't you keep together? Where's that bishop of yours?
But seeing that he could elicit no comprehensible answer to his repeated questions, in truth, I did not know how to reply. He relapsed into an equal silence, and now the white bank that I had seen on the horizon began to assume crenellations, which in turn became buildings of immense height and symmetrical aspect, and I forgot my situation in admiration and amazement at the panorama that began to unfold beneath us. The county of Surrey appeared to be an extensive forest, ending about a waste of dismantled brick, the suburbs of old London, which extended on each side as far as I could see. Then the modern town began, an outer ring of what I took to be enormous factories and storage warehouses, an inner ring, no doubt, of residences, and then the nucleus, the most splendid city that the imagination could have devised. London seemed to be smaller than the metropolis of a century ago. I could see from the height of Hampstead in the north to the region of Dulwich, and from Woolwich to Acton, all clearly defined, like a
So
great
the
map
business
unrolled
and
beneath me.
Money that I'm
Though I
entitled
could
to.
recognize none of the old landmarks, save the unchanging Thames. The interior city was laid out in squares, huge buildings, sometimes enclosing interior courts, occupying the blocks formed by the parallel and intersecting streets. As we drove inward from the outskirts, the buildings became higher, but always uniformly so, the city thus presenting the aspect of a succession of gigantic steps until the summit, the square mile comprising the heart, was reached. This consisted of an array of enormous edifices with fronts perfectly plain and evidently constructed of brick-faced steelwork, but all glistening a dazzling white, which even at that height made my eyes water, and rising uniformly some 45 or 50 stories. The flat roofs were occupied by gardens or what I took to be gymnasia, sheltered beneath tarpaulins. I saw innumerable airplanes at rest, suspended high above the streets, while others flitted here and there above the roofs, and a whole fleet lay, as if moored, some distance away, apparently over the center of the city, above a singular building which awakened associations in my mind, though I was unable to name it. It had a round dome, being, in fact, the only domed building that I could see. This covered only the central portion of the enormous architectural mass, and appeared to float in the air above an aerial garden, laid out with walks that radiated from a flat building which filled the space between the floating dome and the roof beneath it. I surmised that this must be the new House of Parliament. The entire mass was surrounded by a double wall, with a roofed space of perhaps 90 feet from rear to front, castellated. Mounted on this were what appeared to be a number of large, conical-shaped implements of great size. Long, graceful bridges on arches connected this wall with the domed building, and wall and building glistened from top to base so brilliantly that the glow seared my eyes like sunlight. As we were now flying at a low altitude, I turned my attention to the streets, which appeared like canyons far beneath. Along these swarmed a multitude of travelers, dressed in two colors only, white and blue, the latter vastly predominating. I could see no vehicles, and I imagined, what proved to be correct, that the streets themselves were moving. Most of those journeying seemed content to lean back against the railings, the lowest bars of which projected, forming a continuous seat, and rest. Nearly all the streets were traveling in the same direction, those that reversed this movement being small and comparatively empty. From the presence of what seemed to be iron stanchions set along the edges of these moving ways, I surmised that they were roofed with crystal. Along the front of the buildings ran single tracks, connecting at regular intervals with the streets beneath by means of elevators, which shot up and down continuously bearing their freight. These tracks were placed above each other at 10-story intervals, so that there were 3 or 4 rows of these aerial streets, ranging from the ground to the upper portions of the buildings, all filled with travelers. The buildings, each comprising an entire block, the elevated streets, with their graceful bridges flung forth across the chasms, the absence of any of the old poverty and dirt, and that huge gathering of human beings going about their business in so systematic a fashion, fascinated me and even aroused my enthusiasm. Signs evidently indicated to persons approaching in airships the purpose of each building and landing stage, but these were in characters entirely unintelligible to me. My companion stayed the vessel in the air and tapped me on the arm. I started to see him regarding me with the same expression of humorous perplexity.
"I must put you off here, friend,"
he said.
"I think I have done the best I could for you. You would have died in the forest, while here, well, there's a chance for you, and it's better to go to the leather vats for a few years than to die and go nowhere. I'll know you if we meet again. What's your name?"
"Arnold Pennell," I answered, clasping the hand that he held out to me. He almost jumped.
"Don't tell that to the council, unless you want the rest pure,"
he said. "Don't tell them my name?"
"Not both names, friend. You know what I mean. If you don't know,
He shrugged his shoulders.
mine's Jones.
He said,
My father's was Williams. My grandfather's was Jones again. They say it's one of our oldest names, common in the days before civilization. Now, down we go. The airplane swooped down and came to rest upon the roof immediately beneath us. On this I saw a number of men, apparently practicing gymnastic exercises, and hardly were we at a standstill when two of them came running up to us. They were clad in blue uniforms resembling that of the Air Scout, but instead of a swan, each wore a shield-shaped piece of linen upon his back and breast. "What's this?" they demanded in a breath, pointing at me and bursting into bellowing laughter.
"One of your defectives,"
answered Jones.
"I found him in the forest while patrolling."
They rushed at me and dragged me from the airplane, swiftly patting me about the body as if in search of weapons. Satisfied that I was unarmed, they turned to the Air Scout. "You'll share the reward," they cried, again simultaneously.
"Keep it,"
replied the Air Scout tartly, and rose into the air, waving me a cordial goodbye. They rushed me across the roof to a crowd of other men, similarly clad, down an elevator and into the street. They dragged me upon one of the moving platforms and conveyed me a short distance, descending at the entrance to one of the innumerable shining buildings, over which was inscribed something in the same undecipherable letters. But quickly as we had gone, the report of my arrest seemed to have preceded us, for our way was blocked by a vast and constantly increasing crowd that came running up with lively and shameless curiosity, and, attracted by my rags, I suppose, pressed closely about us and uttered hoots of laughter. I heard the word defective bandied about from mouth to mouth. I looked at these people attentively. There were both men and women present, all wearing clothing of the same pale blue color, which seemed to be prescribed, although the cut of each garment was to some extent individual. In effect, the men wore sack suits of a coarsely woven woolen material, with short, loose trousers fastened with laces about the ankles, and square-cut coats having wide lapels extending to a broad, turned-back collar that fell over the shoulders like a sailor's, revealing a neckpiece of blue linen. The women's short skirts reached to the tops of their high boots, and the fashion seemed to run to large buttons and loose sleeves. They wore no hats. Upon the breast, near the shoulder, each person wore a small linen badge indicative of his occupation. What disconcerted me was the shrewd, mocking smile upon each face. I glanced from one to another, seeking to find something of the same friendly interest that animated me, and met hard, mirthless eyes and mouths twisted in sneering mockery. Another thing that startled and almost terrified me was the absence of a certain conventionality of restraint that had ruled everybody in that other world of mine. For instance, among those jibing at me was a gray-bearded man who danced before me like a small urchin. Another made an expressive pantomime of death. A girl stuck out her tongue at me. I remembered the plaint that never since the glorious age of Greece had the code of public morality coincided with that privately held. This we all knew. The statesman in Parliament was not on bowing terms with the same statesman in the smoking room. Some said it was Christianity, others respectability that bound us in this organic hypocrisy. But now the two codes seemed to have coalesced. A grandfather grimaced at me. A gray-haired woman put out her foot to trip me. If there had been stones, I think they would have flung them at me. But suddenly a youngish lad in white appeared, and the crowd, hastening to make a path for him, shrank back with servile demeanor. Taking advantage of this, my captors, linking their arms in mine, made a rush forward, scattering the mob right and left, and bore me through a swinging door into a small rotunda, in which a number of other policemen were seated with their blue-clad prisoners. End of Chapter 4. Read by Brian Fullen, Plano, Texas, January 2025.
All right, smooth sailing. There we go. That's all that I wanted.
Chapter 5 of The Messiah of the Cylinder, by Victor Rousseau. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. London's Welcome. Inside the rotunda, a burly man in blue, with the white shield on his breast, was standing on guard in front of a second swinging door, above which was painted something in the same strange characters. A few words to him from my captors apparently secured us precedence, for he stared at me curiously, opened the door, and bawled to some person inside. I was pushed into a large courtroom. It contained no seats, however, for spectators or witnesses. The only occupants were the magistrate and his clerk, and a group of policemen who lounged at one end of the room, joking among themselves. The clerk, a little obsequious man in blue, was seated at a desk immediately opposite that of his chief, a pompous, surly fellow in white, wearing about his shoulders a lusterless black cape, which seemed to be a truncation of the old legal gown. Placing me on a platform near the clerk's desk, the two policemen who were in charge of me stepped forward and began an explanation in low tones which was not meant to meet my ears, and did not. The magistrate started nervously and, putting his hand beneath his desk, pulled up a truncheon similar to those that I had seen in the cellar. He handled this nervously during our interview.
Well, what have you to say, you filthy defective?
He shouted at me when the police had ended. I heard a suppressed chuckle behind me, and then became aware that all the police had gathered about me, convulsed with amusement at my rags.
Stand back, you swine,
bellowed the magistrate.
Give me the escaped defectives book,
he added to his clerk. The clerk handed up to him a small publication which I could see contained numerous miniature photographs in color. He began studying it, looking up at me from time to time. Occasionally, at his nod, one of the policemen would seize my face and push it into profile. At last, the magistrate thrust the book away petulantly.
"This isn't one of them,"
he announced to the policeman.
"Who are you?"
he continued, glaring at me.
"You're not on the defectives list. Where do you come from? Tell the truth or I'll commit you to the leathers. Why are you in masquerade? Where's your brass, your print, your number, your district?"
The clerk wagged his middle finger at me and, drawing a printed form from a pile, pushed it toward me. I took it, but I could make nothing of it, for it was in the same unknown characters. I could only read the old-fashioned alphabet. I said. The room echoed with the universal laughter. The magistrate almost jumped out of his chair.
"What?"
he yelled.
"You're lying. You know you are. You have an accent. You're from another province. What's your game?"
The clerk, ignoring his superior's outburst, pulled back the form and, taking in his hand a sort of fountain pen, began to fill it in with a black fluid that dried the instant it touched the paper. "Number, district, province, city, print, and brass?" he inquired. He paused and looked up at me. "Brock or Dolokhov, whorl, loop, or median, facial, cephalic, and color indices, your Sanson test, your Binet rating." But since I made no attempt to answer these utterly baffling questions, the clerk ceased to ply me with them and looked up at the magistrate for instructions. The magistrate, who had been leaning forward, watching me attentively, now smiled as if he had suddenly grasped the situation.
"I'll tell you what you are,"
he said, shaking his finger at me.
"You're a Spanish spy, masquerading as a defective in order to get into the workshops and corrupt the defectives there."
Now I should call him a Slav, said the clerk complacently. He's a Brock, you see, boss, and that makes his offense a capital one, he added complacently. Put him up for the council, then, growled the magistrate. Standardize him, he added to the policeman, and commit him to the stranger's house pending the council's ascription. My captors hurried me away. In the street, a large crowd, which had assembled to see me emerge, greeted me with noisy hooting, and looking again into these hard faces, I began to realize that some portentous change had come over mankind since my long sleep, whose nature I did not understand, but whatever it was, it had not made men better. However, the moving platform quickly carried us away, and the mob dwindled, so that when we reached our destination only a nucleus remained. This, however, followed me persistently, gathering to itself other idlers, who ran beside me, peering up into my face, and fingering my tattered clothes, and pulling at the tails of my coat in half infantile and half simian curiosity. The building which we entered contained a single large room on the ground floor, with desks ranged around the walls. Behind each desk a clerk in blue was seated, either contemplating the scene before him or listening disdainfully to applications. I was taken to a desk near the door. One of the policemen now left me, and the other, who had contrived, without my knowledge, to possess himself of the gold watch that had been in my pocket for the last century, placed it upon the desk before the clerk, who came back slowly and resentfully from a fit of abstraction. "Committed, stranger?" he inquired. "Yep," said the policeman. He had this. The clerk stared at the watch, raised it, and let it fall on its face. The glass splintered, and he jumped in his seat as if a pistol had been discharged. "What is it?" he screamed. "It looks like an antique chronometer," said the policeman, examining it curiously. "See the 12 hours on the dial?" "Well, they aren't listed," the clerk grumbled. "You lie, you thief," retorted the policeman. With some reluctance, but without resentment, the clerk opened a large book in a paper cover, closely printed in fine hieroglyphics interspersed with figures. He turned from place to place until he found what he was trying not to find. Museum chronometers, 1st century BC, listed at 2 hectones. He mumbled and began unlocking a drawer. "BC?" I exclaimed. "What do you mean?" He paused in the act of pulling the drawer out and glared at me. "I said museum chronometer of the 1st century before civilization, you fool," he snarled. "That's what it is, and that's what it's listed at. Here." Extracting some metal counters from the drawer, which he closed with a bang, he thrust them toward me. "What am I to do with these?" I asked. The policeman winked at him, and I caught the word Spain. The clerk's amazement changed to malignant mirth. "The value of your chronometer!" he screamed in my ear as if I were deaf. "But I don't intend to sell it," I retorted. A shriek of laughter at my side apprised me that the crowd had gathered about me. The space about the desk was packed with the same sneering, mirthless faces, and 50 hands were raised in mimicry or gesticulation. "What a barbarian!" murmured a young woman with a typewriter badge on her shoulder. The clerk looked at her and winked maliciously. Then he addressed me again. "If you don't understand now, you will before the council ends ascribing you," he said. "However, I'll explain. Your museum chronometer, not being an object of necessity, is the property of this province. This is a civilized country, and you can't have hoard property here, whatever you can do in Spain. Strangers' effects are bought by the province at their listed value,
and your chronometer is listed at 200 labor units, or ones. In other words, if you have ever heard of the metric system, 2 hectones. Ah, give him the rest cure,
The master
said the
of the
girl
cylinder
with
here.
the typewriter badge, swinging about and stalking away contemptuously. I picked up the metal counters and began examining them. They were crudely made and without milled edges. 2 of them appeared to be of aluminum. On one side was an ant in relief, and under it the inscription, Labor Common 37. On the other side, in bold letters, were the words, Half hectone, 50 ones. There were 2 smaller pieces of a yellowish gray, each stamped, 25 ones. It did not take me more than a moment's calculation to see that if the hectone was 100 units of currency, or labor hours, I had only a hectone and a half instead of 2. I told the clerk of the deficiency. "Don't lie, sign that," he shouted, pushing an ink pad and printed form toward me. "I shall not sign, and I shall bring this theft to the attention of Dr. Sanson," I said, suddenly recollecting the name. It was a chance shot, but its effect was extraordinary. The mob, which had begun to jostle me, suddenly scurried away in the greatest confusion. The clerk turned white. He picked up the money with trembling fingers.
I was like, wait.
"Why, that is so," he exclaimed. "It was a mistake, boss. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. I thought you were a blue," he muttered, looking up at me beseechingly. And he returned me a whole half hectone too much.
Realistic approach.
I tossed this back to him and returned no answer.
With a perk, you know what I
I
mean?
was looking about for a pen with which to sign the
I don't know what
receipt
to tell you
when the
there.
policeman took hold of my thumb in a comically obsequious manner and pressed the ink pad against it. So I made my mark upon the paper. In the corridor outside, he turned toward me humbly. "Are you a trapper, boss?" he asked.
I'm playing
what?
Halo, dude. I don't know what you're
"A
doing.
switch, a wipe. I mean, a council watcher." "A spy, you mean?" I asked. "Certainly not." He shook his head in perplexity and seemed uncertain whether to believe me or not. "He thought you were," he said. "That was an old list he used. You should have had more. Of course, I couldn't get in bad with him by telling you, but you'd have had nothing if I hadn't stood up for you. Isn't that worth something, boss?" I offered him one of these smaller pieces, rather in fear of giving offense, but he pocketed it at once, and then, with a new aggressiveness toward the gathering crowd, took me upstairs to the stranger's bureau. Here I was stripped and examined by 2 physicians, and photographed in 3 positions. My fingerprints were taken, and the 3 indexes. Then a dapper little clerk in blue passed a tape measure in several ways about my head, and beckoned to me mysteriously to come to his desk. "It's too bad," he exclaimed. "What is too bad?" I inquired. "The difference is 5 centimeters, and, well, I'm afraid you're a Brock. I'd like to help you out, but, well, if I can." The meaning of the word suddenly revealed itself to me. "You mean my head is brachycephalic?" I asked. "There is, unfortunately, no doubt," he answered, and, coming closer under the pretense of measuring me again, began to whisper. "You know the measure is flexible," he said, glancing furtively about him. "The revising clerk passes all my measurements without referring back to the doctor's. There's an understanding between us. Now, I could get you into the Dolokhov class. The Longheads." "Yes," he murmured, looking at me with an expression of mutual understanding. "But what advantage would that be to me?" I inquired. "They say," he whispered, "that the council is going to penalize the Brock's several points. It is Dr. Sanson's new theory, you know.
that the Brocks are more defective than the Dolokhofs. Now, I'd risk making you a Dolokhov for, would it be worth a hectone to you? I flushed with indignation. Do you suppose I am going to bribe you? I began loudly. The clerk leaped back. This subject is a Brock, he yelled, and gave the figures to a clerk at the next desk, who made a note on a form and looked at me with intense disgust. So I was set down as broad-headed. Then I was made to sit before a Benet board containing wooden blocks of various shapes, which had to be set in corresponding holes within a period timed on a stopwatch. Word association followed, a childish game at which I had played during the course of my medical training. We had regarded this as one of those transitory fads born in Germany and conveyed to us through the American medium, which came and went and left no byproducts except a little wasted enthusiasm on the part of our younger men. I accomplished both tasks easily, and I thought the physicians seemed disappointed. Finally, I received a suit of bluish-gray color, the stranger's uniform, I was informed, and a pair of high, soft shoes. A metal badge, stamped with letters and figures, was hung about my neck by a cord, and I was turned over to the charge of a blue-clad, grizzled man of shortish stature, with a kindly look in the eyes that strongly affected me. For I realized by now that all these persons about me, all whom I had seen, with whom I had conversed, had lacked something more than goodwill. They gave me the impression of being animated machines, reservoirs of intense energy, and yet not what? I could not determine them. There was a patient humility about his bearing, and yet, I fancied, a sort of stubborn power, a consciousness of some secret strength that radiated from him. He came up to me after conversing with the doctors, blue-clad men with white capes about their shoulders, all of whom had eyed me curiously during their speech with him. "I am the district stranger's guard," he said to me. "You are a foreigner, I understand, and waiting to be ascribed by the council. It is not necessary to make any explanation to me. I am the guard, and nothing more, and it is my task to provide you with food and lodging in the stranger's house until you are sent for, S61845. "I beg your pardon?" I asked, before I realized that he was addressing me by the number on the brass badge that hung from my neck. "My pardon?" he answered, looking at me with a puzzled expression. "That is an antique word, is it not? I mean, I did not know the significance of these numbers." I replied. "Your brass?" he said, still more bewildered. "That is, of course, your temporary number until the council assigns you to your proper place in the community. It means, as you must be aware, stranger of the 6th district. My unofficial name is David. What is yours, friend?" He almost jumped when I told him and glanced nervously about him. We had just passed through the doorway, and he drew me to one side, looking at me in a most peculiar manner. "You must know only one name is legal in this province," he whispered. "Surely you will not hazard everything by such bravado? I mean—" He checked himself and searched my eyes, as if he could not understand whether my ignorance was assumed or real. "Arnold," he said suddenly, as if he had reached a swift and hazardous decision, "you are to be my private guest. If you are assuming ignorance for safety, you shall learn that there is nothing to fear from me. And when you trust me, you shall give me the news of Paul and all our friends. If you are actually a Spaniard, no, tell me nothing. It is essential that you should learn what all our inmates know before you go to the council. Dr. Sanson is not tolerant of strangers unless they learn to conform. I shall help you in every way that is possible. The bureau head has asked me to watch you carefully. It is a special order from headquarters. There is some rumor about you, but it will be all right in my own apartment." I felt too heartbroken more than to thank him briefly.
The sense of my isolation in this new world swept over me with poignant power. David must have guessed something of my feeling, for he said nothing more. We halted for a moment at the entrance to the building, and he pulled a watch from his pocket. I saw that the dial, which was not faced with glass and had the hands inset, was divided into 10 main sections, each comprising 10 smaller ones. 10 hours and 74, he said. We dine at 1:50, 76 minutes to get home. End of Chapter 5. Read by Brian Fullen, Plano, Texas, January 2025. Chapter 6. Of the Messiah of the Cylinder by Victor Rousseau. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Stranger's House. During my brief journeys through the streets earlier in the day, I had been too conscious of my surprise and perplexity to examine my surroundings with any concentration of mind. Now standing on the middle platform of what seemed to be one of the principal streets, and traveled at a speed of about 8 miles an hour, I looked about me with increasing astonishment. I do not know which attracted my attention more, the crowds or the buildings. I asked David for information as we proceeded, stating that I was unable to read the signs, as I was acquainted only with the old alphabet. Seeing his incredulity, I added, "When you are willing, I shall be glad to tell you my history, though I shall hardly hope to be believed. For the present, let me say that I know nothing at all of your modern civilization." "But surely in Russia," David began and checked himself. Thereafter he seemed to admit the possibility that I was not dissembling, and to consider me as a bona fide traveler from some interior Russian province. "Our writing is syllabic," he said. "We have gone the round of the circle and now make the syllable the unit instead of the letter, as the Assyrians did and the Chinese." "And what is the purpose of this blue paint on the buildings?" I asked, shielding my eyes from the dazzling blue-white luster. "Blue?" repeated David in surprise. "There, and there." "Why, that is glow, of course," he answered. "Surely you are not colorblind, Arnold? Or can it be that in where you came from they have only the old 7 colors in the spectrum, from red to violet?" He shook his head and looked at me whimsically. "We have had 9 for at least 20 years, he said. "Mull below red, and glow above violet. What our ancestors called ultraviolet and believed to be invisible, though it was staring them in the face everywhere all the time. There used to be a theory that the color sense has developed with civilization. Don't make any reference to that color blindness of yours, Arnold," he continued after a brief pause. It occurred to me that he had not explained the choice of this color, though he had named it. "Here is the Bureau of Statistics," he went on as we traveled past another of the interminable buildings. "This is the Bureau of Prints and Indexes. There are more than 1,000 million records within. This is the Bureau of Economics, this of Pedigrees and Relationships, this of Defective Germplasm, and this is our 6th District School." The streets were scrupulously clean. They occupied only the central part of the space between the fronts of the buildings, that which would have been called the pavement formerly, being used as resting and lounging places. "Here's our district store," he added. "Would you like to look inside?" I assented, and we stepped off the moving portion of the street into an open space surrounded by telephone funnels, at which small groups of men and women were listening. As he halted, a loud voice began calling. "Latest news. Rain is expected. Don't forget Freedom Day. Muster for your amusement in Picnic Park, or the council will make it hot for you."
The escaped defectives all caught and sent to the leathers. A foreign spy captured this morning after a desperate resistance and now under guard. The miserable defective has confessed, involving numerous others. He is a low-class brock and a filthy degenerate. Boss Lemkin is on the job. Praise him. Hurrah! Shouted the mob. Come, said David, plucking me by the sleeve. It was only then I realized that the reference was to me. I must have uttered an indignant exclamation, for he drew me away hurriedly. Hush! You must keep your tongue guarded in public, he whispered. One can hear at both ends of the telephone. But it is a lie, I said indignantly. Who can spread such news as that, and why? I noticed that one or two people were watching me curiously. Then, glancing up, I was amazed to see my face outlined upon a screen beneath a hood that formed a dark circle around it. It was an execrable caricature designed to arouse hate and contempt, and yet the likeness was plainly discernible. Somehow David got me away. It will be all right, he kept repeating. It doesn't mean anything. See, here is our store. Bewildered, I allowed him to lead me toward the entrance of a large building before which a woman sat within a cage of crystal. Change pieces, she cried at intervals in a high-pitched voice. Change pieces or show brasses. We change our money here, David explained. Purchases of more than half a hectone are made on the credit system. Our brasses are identification checks. The district clearinghouse keeps the complete record of each citizen's financial status. I had expected to see all the products of the world spread out within. I found, instead, only a single sample of each kind of merchandise, the goods themselves being stored in warehouses. Seeing an excellent blue overcoat of fine cheviot, I paid 30 ones for it, and David ordered a similar coat to be sent to me at the stranger's house. Watch the street, he said as we emerged. I perceived the passengers scrambling off the moving portion of the roadway. A moment later the track began to travel in the opposite direction. We reverse our street.
I hear you. Okay, I'll go over there. Yeah, I was paying attention and have something going on in my eyes right now. Horned Lock Whale. Bottomless Pool. David. Got it. Hold on. Well, first and foremost, as was requested by the master of the cylinder here, I guess what would Jesus, the master? He's the master of literature. It makes sense. I see you. What else are we doing? Throw down here. Hold on. A peek? You trying to peek in on me? Chapter 27. In that day the Lord with his sword, and great and strong sword, shall punish Leviathan, the piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. Hold on. Okay. Let me name it. Let me get going here. Even Leviathan, that crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. Okay. See what we can get going here. The dragon that is in the sea. I don't know what dragon that may be. In that day sing ye unto her a vineyard of red wine. I, the Lord, do keep it. I will water it every moment. Lest any hurt it, I will keep it. I will keep it night and I will water it every moment. I will keep it night and day. Fury is not in me. I mean the usual. I want to do something different, sir. Let me see what I can get going here. Who would set the briars and thorns against me in battle? I would go through them, I would burn them together. I will burn them together. Burnout, Bastionite. That makes sense. Okay. It's the normal. Or let him take hold of my strength, that ye may make peace with me, and ye shall make peace with me. He shall cause them that come of Jacob to take root. Israel shall blossom and bud, and fill the face of the world with fruit. I'm looking. And he shall make peace with me. I'm trying to figure this out. The world with fruit. Blossom with bud. Hold on. Sir? Okay, there we go. Relax for a second. Let's find our fruit. How are we going to do this? I saw the first. Hath he smitten? Hath he smitten him as he smote those that smote him? Or is he slain according to the slaughter of them that are slain by him? What kind of riddle is this? Or is he slain? Let me figure this out, this parably. Hath he smitten him as he smote those that smote him? Or is he slain according to the slaughter of them that are slain by him? Hath he smitten him as he smote those that smote him? Or is he slain according to the slaughter of them that are slain? Squee? Squee, bro? Throwing on squee? In measure, when it shooteth forth, thou wilt debate with it. He saith his rough wind in the day of the east wind. The east wind, bro? By this, therefore, shall the iniquity of Jacob be purged. And this is all the fruit to take away his sin. When he maketh all the stones of the altar as chalk stones that are beaten in sunder, the groves and images shall not stand up. That are beaten in sunder. Beaten in sunder, the groves and images shall not stand up.